This podcast is powered by the Mitt TV of Romeo, Michigan. If you're looking to start a podcast for your business or personal use, look no further than Mitt TV. They can get you access to equipment, a production engineer, and can even edit your podcast. That's all right here at Mitt TV of Romeo, Michigan, and you can contact them right now via email at mitt.tvromeo@gmail.com. That's mitt.tvromeo@gmail.com. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Kelly Stevens with the Northern Macomb Regional Chamber, and today I am joined by Dwight Farrow, the General Manager of Smart Transportation, and Clara Russell, our own Parks and Rec Director, who also oversees the STAR Transportation. Welcome, you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So, Dwight, give me a little background on your position here.
Well, I'm the General Manager for Smart. We operate service in all of Macomb, Oakland, and parts of Wayne County, and we provide some service into Detroit. And so that's pretty much what it is. We are the public transportation provider basically for the suburban area, hence the SMART.
SMART, right. And Clara?
So, STAR Transportation is senior transportation through advanced reservations. It is, transportation for seniors and persons with disabilities for Romeo, Washington, Bruce area. It's ran through millage and through SMART funding at this point. And
so, Dwight, give me the importance of public transportation for the Tri-County area.
Well, I think that it is the foundation for anything as it relates to job attraction for companies to relocate here, whether they're service jobs, manufacturing jobs, whatever. Mass transit, which I'll talk about in a minute, is something that the region needs in order to be able to be attractive for businesses to relocate here. And when you look at other regions that have invested in mass transit, they get jobs we don't get.
The attraction is better.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. It is one of those situations where it's kind of like the field of dreams. If you build it, they'll come.
Correct. Yeah.
So we'll have to invest some front money in order to be able to do it. But the long term would be very bright for this region.
And you're correct with the job attraction. We are not attracting those companies because I think we're missing out on the mass transportation portion. Claire, talk about the importance for the northern end of the county here.
So, again, from my perspective for STAR, our seniors, it's the independence. We want to make sure that people have a way to get to places. Our seniors and our persons with disabilities, they can get to the store, they can get to healthcare, they're not necessarily working at this point, but they could be. But that they have that independence and that place to go. So when you look at public transportation and you look at Northern Macomb County, being able to reach those other places, I could see where public transportation and the businesses, and we need to get to those other regions so that people can work or businesses can come here and people can work here. So it's looking into this, because I did dive a little bit. It was pretty eye-opening to see how important public transportation is.
Talk about the economic impact.
Well, the economic impact impacts people who it impacts the region, whether you use the system or not. The more jobs that come here means that when businesses bring their plants or office space or whatever the case may be, that's more business tax revenue that comes into the counties and cities and what have you, which long term keeps personal property taxes lower. It also, the more people that come in, the income tax that comes to the state also goes up. So it's an advantage to everybody because all of that fresh additional money that comes in with all of those people is the tide that floats everybody's boat. And to piggyback on what was said previously, and I'll use this example about transit. If you look at SMART, and if you have ever flown Southwest Airlines, Southwest Airlines has one plane, 737, Boeing 737. There may be different lengths, but it's the exact same plane. Whereas if you look at Delta, Delta has an array of planes from very big to very small to get into a number of different size airports. That's what regional transit and mass transit has to look like in this community, to be able to serve and provide the independence that we have to be able to do as we have baby boomers who start to age, who for a whole host of reasons don't want a car, can't afford the car, but they are still independent. And so when you look at this expansive area, all of Oakland, all of Macomb, and all of Wayne is 2,100 square miles. The Washington, D.C. system is 1,600.
Wow.
To put this in some perspective.
Well, you were talking about the major city hubs and how they turned how they funded the. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, one of the issues that we have in the state of Michigan is our funding is not sustainable for transit. So like for SMART, for example, we have 3 different funding links. We have one length in Macomb, a different length in Oakland, and a different length in Wayne. And none are sustainable, which makes it very difficult for us to compete for federal dollars for some of these larger grants. The states that we compete most with use a different method, sales tax in particular, but I understand the state of Michigan, the Constitution doesn't allow for a local option sales tax, which would give different communities the ability to tax themselves at different rates. Well, the competition does. In Ohio, they do. So Cincinnati, Columbus, Toledo, and Cleveland all are funded by a sales tax. The transit system in Atlanta, all the transit systems in Texas. Those are just examples of systems that are funded with some level of sales tax. And it is, in terms of the amount that's generated, it is far more than you would ever be able to generate with any kind of property tax. It's not even an apples to apples comparison.
I think that's a good lane to start looking at for the state of Michigan, because as a resident here in the state, we're not open to raise property taxes, right?
Well, I don't know of any state that's open to raise property taxes. I've lived in lots of states, and when you talk about raising property taxes, that if you want to get people to come to a public meeting to talk about
about taxes, right?
Talk about raising property taxes, and you will see more residents than you care to.
We're currently at 6%. Give me an example of what these other major cities are charging. And is it significantly higher?
Well, in most places, it's never more than 1/10%. So
it's really very, very mint.
So it's a penny.
Wow. So how do you convince our leaders to go down that route?
Well, this is a start. This is a start. But I think that what it is that there are, we're doing some research at SMART to be able to show what can be done. There's another component about this that when I was in Cincinnati, we explored and did part of. It also gives a transit system an opportunity to be able to help with infrastructure.
Which is desperately needed here.
Fix the damn road.
Yeah.
So I'll give you an example. There's a bridge that needed to be replaced in Cincinnati, the Western Hills Viaduct. The transit system is funding over the next 25 years over $200 million to replace that bridge at $8.2 million a year.
Wow.
That comes from the transit tax.
Wow.
So being able to get people to see that there's a different way. And I think the important thing is the region was obviously built by the automobile industry. There's
Right,
no
we
question.
talked about
There's
that,
no
yeah.
question about that. But even the automobile manufacturers recognize the importance of mass transit. Now, I'll give you an example. When I tell people this, they're like, really? So Toyota, which is, if not the largest, the second largest manufacturer of automobiles in the world. So I'm going to ask both of you, where do you think Toyota is headquartered? Their U.S. headquarters, where do you think it is?
Is it Nashville?
Nope.
It's down south
Detroit.
somewhere.
It's in Plano, Texas.
Okay.
That's a suburb of Dallas.
Yep, I've been there.
Okay. They used to be in California.
Okay.
Okay. But they were looking for a place, one, that could have had talent, much like this region does. They were also looking for some place that had regional transit. So if you look at the Dallas area, between Dallas and Fort Worth, there's 5 or 6 million people in that area that can access Plano and access Toyota in Plano by mass transit. They don't expect people to drive there. In fact, microtransit, which is like Uber, Lyft, and what have you, it's like our flex service here.
I need you to talk about that a little more, but go ahead.
Well, Toyota gave the Dallas system $1 million in seed money to start that.
Okay, so they put the money up,
Right.
build it, and they will come, right?
They will come. That is exactly. So if you also think about the fact that in Atlanta, Porsche's North American headquarters is in Atlanta, and so is Mercedes-Benz.
Mass transit. Yep.
Bingo. So, and I want to go back to the Toyota example to really illustrate the point. Toyota has a plant in northern Kentucky. And as a result of that, there were a number of support positions, engineering and all kinds of technology positions that were in the northern Kentucky area between Cincinnati and the airport. Those jobs are in Plano. So all of those jobs that people would drive from Cincinnati to northern Kentucky, to those jobs, now those people are in the Dallas area.
Taking mass transit.
Taking mass transit. So again, think about, not only did they move there, but they pulled jobs from other places to get there. And so that's the way that we have to start thinking about it. Is we have an airport that has as a hub airport with an international reach. And one of the things I do know about the airlines, depending on who's in town, they'll add flights wherever they need to add flights
Right.
to do that. And so when Toyota went to Dallas, they have flights to Japan to make sure that Toyota's happy.
So we need to totally realign our thinking on mass transit. And how do we get that word out to the policymakers?
Well, we're starting to have those conversations. We started it first at the Tri-County Summit. I have myself personally have been in the transit business for 44 years. And I have seen what it was like to have limited transit to what a sales tax would do and how it drove the growth of the region.
How is your message being received in
Well,
our area?
Well, for the people that I've talked to so far, they get it, but it's a lift, It's not
It's not going to happen overnight.
No, it's not.
No.
But the question is the will. So recognizing first and foremost that in order for your region to grow, you've got to have mass transit. You have to have
If you want to attract new business, yeah.
And I want to be real clear. I'm not talking about just more buses. And I don't want anybody to say, oh my gosh, he's talking about building a bunch of rails. I'm not saying that either. But there are ways to be able to move lots of people with something other than rail. They have something called fixed guideway BRT, which basically is a dedicated right-of-way with buses in it. lot cheaper than rail, but does the same thing. And so the wonderful thing about this community is because it was built for the automobile, you have really wide streets here
So you could add that line.
that could accommodate. These typically run down the middle of the street,
Okay.
and so if you look at some of these freeways that we call streets, they would be perfect for it. And there are a number of examples in the country that are like that. Indianapolis, Minneapolis, St. Paul. These are places that have all done this within the last 20 years.
I'm going to go over to Clara. So listening to all this, and you're running like just a small pot of this, what's your thoughts on the future?
So definitely I look at Romeo, Washington, Bruce, and I look at Macomb County and what SMART does, because SMART is such a big influence. And, like you said, with the SMART is millage based, and you're looking at every 5 years. We look at every 4 years with our millage, and we have to just make sure that it's sustainable and that it can last for a lot longer than that. So,
What do you think about the sales tax idea?
I think that's an outstanding idea, and I think it's definitely needed, that we need to make this happen. And I think that the younger generation is the smart generation that is not driving the individual cars. And
Well, I think COVID changed all that too.
Well, it was, COVID meant more people working from home, which really then made the need for like our CPPs even more. Because what we would love to be able to do is, with additional funding, is we would fund entities like STAR to provide service even more than just to seniors
right.
and disabled.
Right.
We would expand that to provide that service to anybody.
Right.
And so that means that more people could be able to have access. If, the statistics are already there. People get their driver's license much later now than they used to. I was waiting on my mother to get home from work so I could go get my driver's license. Well, now they're not.
All my kids did the same thing, right?
So they're not in such of a big hurry. But, in 2015, Zipcar, which is one of these places where you rent a car by the hour, they got cars on the street, they did a survey where they were surveying millennials and giving up a choice between a smartphone, and that's a 2015 smartphone, not a 2024 smartphone, and a car. They picked the smartphone overwhelmingly by probably close to 80%, because if they had the smartphone, they could get wherever they needed to go.
You talked about the Flex program. Talk a little more what that is.
So Flex, so one of the things is that Flex basically is an on-demand service that you use your phone.
Kind of like a Lyft or an Uber.
Kind of like a Lyft or an Uber.
Okay.
And so in the time that I've been here, we've probably tripled our capacity because the demand has been great in the pilot areas that we've been using. But one of the issues is that we're constrained by funding. The demand for it is much, much greater. I mean, even in northern Macomb, my goodness, there could be a lot more service if we had more dollars for it. And one of the unique things about our community is we have so many community partners. We have, I've never been in a place that had this many community partner kind of entities as we have here, which with the dollars that we have, if we had more, would really make it a lot easier for us to be able to provide much more service, particularly in some of these more northern communities, some of those that are less densely populated, that just don't lend themselves to having a bus.
Nope.
So
we barely had Uber drivers up until the last 3 years.
Well, and so that's the thing. When people have asked, well, why don't you use Uber? I say, well, the problem with Uber is dependent upon when somebody wants to work.
Right.
As opposed to,
right.
And so with the right funding model, it would not take very long for us to be able to implement and transform mass transit in this region. Not nearly as long as some people would think.
Well, and I think it's affordable. What you were saying about the sales tax?
There's no question. Well, let's put it this way. it's a tax relief for citizens because instead of funding SMART through your property tax, you don't fund it that way anymore.
Right.
So you get the relief there.
Well, and it's coming out in smaller increments.
Oh, well, the other thing is that you have to take into consideration is there are a number of people who come into these 3 counties that don't live in the 3 counties
True. Yep.
that would be paying it. There are 33 million people who go through DTW every year.
Wow. Wow.
Imagine if those people, it doesn't take long to spend $10 at the airport, but
Yeah, no kidding.
let's just assume that the average person spends $10. You take that and extrapolate that. That's a lot of money that we don't get right now.
I think your message is awesome. So how do we get this in front of the policymakers?
Well, the election's over, so
Now you can start working.
we see who we're dealing with now, and having conversations with business leaders and having conversations like this. It's a lift. I'm not saying that this is easy because anytime that you're trying to change anybody's
something.
constitution, that's some work. But I do think that when you look at it the way that other regions have done it, I'll go back to DART in Dallas. Economic development was part of their mission statement in 1984. Now we're talking about 2024.
Right.
And the thing about people don't not come here because of the cold. That's big. That doesn't stop anybody from. But this is a absolutely beautiful state.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of, and because I've lived in some of these other states that have got some of these other sales tax, and in terms of, you have all 4 seasons here. You've got the lakes. You've got all of the trees. It's an absolutely fabulous state. Not to mention the fact that you have some of the finest universities in the country here to be able to get talent from, whether it's University of Michigan, Michigan State, Wayne State. I could go on and on.
Right.
So you've got all of that here.
We just have to rearrange how we're doing business.
Right. and the last thing is that there are a number of people whose children go somewhere else and don't want to come back because they don't have to own a car where they are. And so let's bring our children home.
Mm-hmm.
As somebody who, my son went to Howard in D.C. from Dallas, he hadn't been back yet. So I understand, how you feel like you haven't lost them, but you like them to be a little closer.
Right.
And so I think that we have some opportunities here to be able to do that, to be able to attract the Generation Z, Millennial, and X make up 60% of the population of the United States. Those are the people we got to attract.
We got to talk to them.
We got to attract them.
Yep. So Clara, the funding for STAR is a little bit different.
Right.
So looking at his vision, how do you see how STAR would be impacted if we went to a different funding model?
Well, STAR is ran through a local millage.
Right.
And then through SMART, we do receive funding that.
So they may be able to give you more funding if we
Right.
went with a different model.
We may be able to replace it all. Who knows?
Right. Because they not only do Romeo, Washington, Bruce, but they do all of the local areas
Right.
receive that have other STAR or similar operations that we have. So I could see where, like you said, it would just kind of boom. And the safety, our residents or the people that use STAR, they feel that safety, where if you just went out and you did Uber or a private, there's not that safety.
That safety factor. Yeah.
I understand.
Yep.
I completely agree.
So this would be.
I think it's an awesome vision for the future.
Mm-hmm.
We just need to get you in front of people.
Yeah.
Well, this is I want to thank the chair of the Macomb County Board of Commissioners, Chairman Brown, for affording us this opportunity to be able to discuss this. He has been a big proponent of transit. I remember my very first conversation with him 3 years ago, and he's been a supporter ever since then of SMART and what we can do. And we've had this conversation before. So I think that there are jobs here even now that you can't fill
Because people can't get to them.
because people can't get to them. And 2/3 of the ridership on DDOT transfer to SMART every day going to jobs in Oakland and Macomb. So getting the region to look at itself truly as a region.
Not fighting with each other.
No.
Come together and work together so that you can
because
get this done.
right, because I'll close with this. Plano is in a different county than Dallas County. So if you were driving up a freeway like you're driving up 75 for different cities. So you go to Dallas, you go to Richardson, you go to Plano. The property value in the houses in Richardson, which are not in Plano, over the last 20 years have gone up 400%.
Wow. We also have an aging population here in Michigan. We need to attract those younger workers. And again, to your point, they're not going to come if we can't get them to the jobs.
Well, I'll tell you something else. You have an aging population, but they want to work.
And sometimes they have to work,
Sometimes
right?
sometimes they have to. I mean, with the price of medicine and the price of this and the price of that, as things go up, a car is pretty expensive in the grand scheme of things.
Add gas and insurance.
Yeah.
And because I know some of the medicine that I take, I'm blessed enough to be able to afford it. But I know some people who, if they had to pay it, they'd have to give up something significant in order to be able to do that.
And they shouldn't have to make those kind of
They
decisions.
should not have to. So if we can do that, and again, this helps those people who are in that sandwich generation. My mother stopped driving in 2012. She died in 2018. Everywhere she went, my son or my nephew or a friend took her. My son used to drive 30 miles one way to take her to the grocery store.
Wow.
Every week. So imagine what she could have done
If she could get on mass transit.
if she could have taken Flex or what have you, because they didn't have community partners in Dallas like what we're talking about here. And so think about those people who are here who have children and they have aging parents, that this is one less thing for them to be able to worry about, because now I don't have to worry about, can I get my mother or my father to get their hair cut or whatever the case may be. So it's a quality of life issue as well for younger people who have parents who are aging. So there are lots of benefits to this beyond the economics. But at the end of the day, all of this is about keeping people here and getting people to be here.
I love the message. I thank you guys for coming in this
Thank you.
afternoon. I'm totally on board with the idea.
Okay.
So where do we go to get the sales tax rolling, right?
Well, we a little bit at a time, but like I said, this is a great start, so obviously we're going to be talking to more people as we go forward, because I think that we have the opportunity to transform this region. You do. In ways.
Economic development,
all of the above.
Right.
And I can just from my own personal experience, I have seen and benefited personally from investments in transit. And so I'm certainly a believer.
Well, your message was awesome today. And Claire, thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
I have a few announcements on behalf of the Chamber. Our member of the month this month is L&L Products. They're located up north of town here, but they are a worldwide manufacturer and a big supporter of the Chamber. This Friday in downtown Romeo, we will be hosting Ladies' Night Out from 6 to 9 p.m. Saturday, November 30th is Small Business Saturday. December 6th, the 22nd Emma Awards will be happening at Greystone. And then on December 11th, we have a member mixer in Richmond. Again, thank you for joining me today, and we look forward to seeing how this progresses.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This podcast is powered by the Mitt TV of Romeo, Michigan. If you're looking to start a podcast for your business or personal use, look no further than Mitt TV. They can get you access to equipment, a production engineer, and can even edit your podcast. That's all right here at Mitt TV of Romeo, Michigan, and you can contact them right now via email at mitt.tvromeo@gmail.com. That's mitt.tvromeo@gmail.com.